from the Cronkite studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
Neil Gorsuch has started his Senate confirmation hearings today. How Arizona Senator Jeff Flake feels about the president's pick for the Supreme Court.
And former Secretary of Homeland Security Michael Chertoff is in Arizona today. What he had to say about the nation's cybersecurity.
Plus, how farmers are working to conserve water for more than hundreds of acres in Verde Valley.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Zach Pocklip.
And I'm Emma Lockhart. Thank you for joining us.
It's been more than a year since the death of Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, and the man who has been nominated to take his seat faced the Senate Judiciary Committee today. Cronkite News reporter Anthony Marroquin is in Washington, where Arizona Senator Jeff Flake joined in the largely partisan grilling of Judge Neil Gorsuch on day one.
While the Supreme Court was in session today short-handed, members of Congress were at a hearing to decide whether to appoint Judge Neil Gorsuch as the new Supreme Court judge. Gorsuch is looking to fill the vacancy left by the late Antonin Scalia last spring. Stakes are high on Capitol Hill as the Senate begins what is expected to be several days of hearings on Judge Neil Gorsuch's nomination to the Supreme Court.
Our job is to assess whether he will protect the legal and constitutional rights of all Americans.
Republicans praised President Donald Trump's nominee and said voters were looking for a judge like Gorsuch.
The people chose originalism, textualism, and rule of law.
That was echoed by Arizona Senator Jeff Flake.
I'm excited to confirm a justice who reveres the separation of powers as a central principle of our Constitution.
But Democrats with fresh memories of Republicans' refusal to give a hearing to President Barack Obama's Supreme Court nominee, Merrick Garland, are having a hard time being convinced.
Committee Republicans met behind closed doors and declared that they would surrender the independence of this committee to do the majority leader's bidding, and they ignored the Constitution in the process.
Some also say Gorsuch's belief in originalism, interpreting the Constitution as the framers had in mind in 1789, has no place in the 21st century.
I firmly believe the American Constitution is a living document intended to evolve as our country evolves.
Still, Flake said Gorsuch's philosophy is a common and well-thought-out approach and praised the judge's conviction to interpret laws instead of making them.
With Judge Gorsuch, I think the record shows that we can be confident that he will read the law as written and not legislate from the bench.
The hearings are expected to go through the end of the week. We'll keep you updated on any and all major updates as they come. But for now, in Washington, Anthony Marroquin, Cronkite News.
Meanwhile, inside the Supreme Court today, the current 8 members heard arguments in an Arizona divorce case. John and Sandra Howe agreed during their 1991 divorce to split his military pension, but that pension was later reduced after he applied for disability benefits. Arizona Supreme Court agreed that Sandra Howe should be reimbursed for the lost income, but John Howe took the case to the U.S. Supreme Court, which has ruled in earlier cases that disability benefits are off limits. Mrs. Howe's attorney says she deserves the money.
She is in her 60s, her mid-60s, and she is disabled. And she does depend upon her Social Security and what is supposed to be her share of her ex-husband's retirement pay. But need doesn't really enter into the legal analysis here. It's a property question. Whether she needed the money or not, she's entitled to what he agreed to give her and what the court ordered him to give her.
To read the full story on the Howe pension case, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org. The U.S. Supreme Court is catching other Arizona attention today. The court refused to review a lower court's ruling that Tucson's election system for city council races is constitutional. The justices let stand the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruling that the hybrid system used by Tucson doesn't violate the Constitution's commitment to one vote per person. Tucson is divided into wards, and the residents can only vote for candidates in their ward during primary elections.
On Capitol Hill today, FBI Director James Comey testified that he has no information supporting President Donald Trump's wiretapping claims. At that same hearing, Comey confirmed to the House Intelligence Committee that the FBI is investigating Russia's possible meddling in the U.S. election and connections with the Trump campaign.
I have been authorized by the Department of Justice to confirm that the FBI, as part of our counterintelligence mission, is investigating the Russian government's efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. And that includes investigating the nature of any links between individuals associated with the Trump campaign and the Russian government.
As for the testimony on foreign hacks and FBI surveillance played out on Capitol Hill, the former Secretary of Homeland Security was in the Valley today to discuss terrorism and cybersecurity. Reporter Joe Constantine is in the Cronkite control room with the details.
Cameras and microphones are everywhere, and smart technology and televisions, phones, and personal tech are just adding to mass surveillance threats. These were just a few of the topics discussed today at the Buse Center for Law and Society. Homeland Security Department under President George W. Bush and co-authored the Patriot Act following the 9/11 attacks. He was just one of the speakers at today's open forum to discuss current methods of combating terrorism and cybersecurity threats. Chertoff says hacks are making headlines every day, and all Americans need to be aware of the balancing security with their personal privacy.
I think all of us are somewhat surprised at how much of our personal data is out there, not just in the hands of the government, but frankly in the hands of the private sector. And I think maybe to a degree that most people don't appreciate, that volume is growing exponentially.
Chertoff said one of the best examples of surveillance coming into your personal lives could be like a car insurance company providing a discount for an uplink in your car that could be tracking your driving habits. Another one is a fitness band on your wrist that could track huge amounts of data and give them to your insurance company as well as your employer. This is where transparency and trust need to reconcile. In the control room, Joe Constantine, Cronkite News.
The rise of prescription drug abuse is sweeping the nation.
And one city is taking major steps in combating the epidemic. Coming up on Cronkite News, what a task force in Southern California is doing to crack down on the abuse of powerful painkillers.
And how a Phoenix group is empowering women to learn and practice computer coding.
Opioid overdoses are one of the leading causes of death in the country. Cronkite News reporter Jelani Martinez met with the Sheriff's Department in Ventura County that started a task force that targets illegally prescribed medications.
The Pharmaceutical Crimes Unit investigates any type of illegal street drugs or prescribed medication. Aside from the top 4 narcotics, heroin, cocaine, meth, and marijuana that Ventura County originally targeted, they needed to turn their attention to a different type of drug.
But when we seen that there was a link between prescribed medications and heroin overdoses or heroin addicts, we realized that we needed to focus more on the relationship between opiate-type drugs like OxyContin.
From May 2013 to January 2017, the task force has made a total of 385 arrests and seized over $2 million. Doctors are one of the main sources of dispensing opiate drugs.
Doctors wouldn't even do an examination on some of these people, and we found that this is one of the biggest problems that we're having, and why people are having a lot of prescribed medications in their home, or they're abusing medications and ultimately going to heroin.
Patients may also have leftover opiates that can be risky to leave in the home.
We've even had cases where somebody would take their own Ritalin or Adderall, and what they would do is they would sell it for $5 or more a pill to high school kids.
If you do have any unused medications, you can drop it off right here at the pharmaceutical disposal bin, so check your local police department if they have one. Dr. Michael Hurt, who specializes in internal medicine and nutrition, encourages doctors to avoid drug-related deaths by addressing the potential effects of certain medications.
Whatever we learn from an unfortunate incident like that helps the rest of us to be better, perhaps more careful, perhaps open the communication lines a little wider so that we prevent future tragedies.
The Pharmaceutical Task Force is ultimately working to stop the epidemic and combat the transfer of legal prescriptions to the illegal market. In Ventura County, Jelani Martinez, Cronkite News.
Cronkite News is dedicated to covering the opioid epidemic in Arizona and nationwide. Our documentary, Hooked RX, From Prescription to Addiction, highlighted the problem of painkillers here in our state. You can watch the documentary and find resources for getting help online at hookedrx.com.
The number of traffic stops enforced on St. Patrick's Day last week exceeded numbers on the holiday from last year by more than 1,500. The total number of traffic stops conducted on the holiday have increased by a couple thousand each year, except for a slight dip in 2015. This year, law enforcement made 9,814 stops and a total of 349 DUI arrests. Water is one of the most important necessities in Arizona.
Some farms in our state are trying to find more conservative ways of watering their crops. Coming up on Cronkite News, how new methods of water collection can save ranchers a lot of money.
It's been a beautiful day across the valley. When those temperatures are going to drop back down, coming up next.
According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, 73% of the coding field is comprised of men. However, Cronkite News reporter Cassidy McDonald found that there are many women-based groups in the Phoenix community making efforts to close the gender gap in the coding field.
Seeing a group of women who catch up once a week over coffee is nothing out of the norm. But at Changing Hands Bookstore in Central Phoenix, there is only one requirement to becoming a part of this caffeinated group: have an interest in coding.
What I'm trying to do is a weekly code and coffee.
The Women Who Code weekly meetup runs through a partnership with the national nonprofit Girl Development Program. The purpose is to create a sense of community and provide tutoring to women in the coding field.
Every week there's somebody new that is interested in programming, but we always have someone there that comes because they're feeling they're not part of things maybe in the workplace. Maybe they're the only woman in the department, but for some reason it got to be associated as a man's job.
Many women who are involved in the Girl Development Program say that the lack of women in technology-related careers can instill feelings of doubt.
It's this imposter syndrome, right? Everybody goes, it's not really me who's doing it. I can't really do this. So I tell them, I say, you know what you need to do is you need to get inside your head somehow. Figure out how to get inside your head and tell yourself that it's okay.
According to the U.S. Department of Labor Statistics, women hold only 26% of the approximately 4 million computing-related occupations in the U.S.
I'm outside of ASU's School of Computing, Informatics, and Decision System Engineering, where an ASU coding professor told me that only 10 to 20% of all students in her class are women.
See a lot of female students succeed in our program, and actually top students tend to be female students too.
However, in order to encourage more female students to pursue computing careers, she feels that women need more exposure to the field.
They don't get exposed to this kind of concepts early on, so they feel a little bit intimidating when they come to colleges.
Pond says that the program helps empower women to show them that they can become coders.
2 years ago, I was doing girl development classes, and now I'm a developer. If we can empower women in technology, then they're going to empower other women. And it's just going to be this kind of flow into closing the gender gap.
In Phoenix, Cassidy McDonald, Cronkite News.
The Women Who Code group meets up every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. for an all-ages event at Changing Hands Bookstore in Phoenix.
Water in the Verde River is under a lot of stress from farmers in the Verde Valley. I spent the day with one farmer looking to conserve with the help of a group that has restored over 2 million gallons of water.
Farming is my calling, my purpose.
Zach Hauser's purpose is also the family business, covering 600 acres of the Verde Valley in northern Arizona.
As far as farming goes, we're the largest in the valley.
A major component of farming, water. The Verde River looks abundant now, but not for long. Water in the Verde Valley is not adjudicated, meaning it's not regulated.
We can use, whatever we want, but us being responsible, we like to use as little as possible.
Through flood irrigation, this carrot field here would be flooded for hours with gallons of water, starting from this end and ending with that end. But the problem is those plants where we started would be in water for hours, and these plants are dry. But drip irrigation can fix that.
We're somewhere in the neighborhood of 50% efficient with flood, whereas drip can get in the 90% range efficient.
Converting to drip cost $1,000 per acre, a price that some farmers are not able to pay, according to Kim Shonick from the Nature Conservancy.
You have to install a pump, you have to have filtered water, so you have a power cost associated with the farmer takes on, and you have a lot of upfront labor to get that equipment in the ground.
The Nature Conservancy funds projects throughout the Verde Valley with the help of Change the Course, a nationwide campaign to restore fresh water. Change the Course urges companies like REI and Coca-Cola to offset their water usage by funding projects.
And be able to concentrate and see the actual impact in an area that is iconic, beautiful, a great place to paddle, and connected to the health of the watershed.
Now that the project is paid for, it's up to the Hausers to make it work.
Trying to carry on the tradition, not mess up the name too much.
Beyond the Verde Valley, Change the Course has projects across 10 states and Mexico.
Chloe, in Verde Valley, we saw some above average temperatures today.
Yeah, and what temperatures can we expect for the state?
Well, let's take a look and head over to the Weather Center. We're looking at 92 degrees as your high today and low of 62 degrees. That's higher than average, but we're definitely not beating any records. As for the rest of the state, you can see 93 degrees in Phoenix, milder temperatures up north, 65 degrees in Flagstaff and 75 degrees in Prescott. As for the rest of your state, we're again seeing those higher temperatures, 64 degrees in Chandler, 65 degrees in Levine, and 92 degrees over in Buckeye. It's the first day of spring, and that does bring a gift for you. We're seeing temperatures drop down below the 90s. We'll see 90 degrees tomorrow, 85 degrees on Wednesday, and 70 degrees on Thursday. As for the rest of your week, it will stay pretty cool, beautiful weather, 79 degrees on Friday, 83 degrees on Saturday, 76 degrees on Sunday. Get outside and enjoy those beautiful temperatures that are dropping down, lower than what we have been seeing in the few past weeks. In the Cronkite Weather Center, I'm Chloe Ranshaw.
A federal court has denied legal challenges filed against the Navajo generating system by environmental and conservation groups. The challenge sought to reduce haze by limiting emission from the station located in northern Arizona. Owners of the plant announced in February their plan to close the generating station in 2019. This isn't the only Navajo power plant facing a possible closure. Just last week, PNM announced that it was considering shutting down the San Juan generating station in New Mexico by 2022.
Those who are hearing impaired often have trouble communicating to others in everyday life.
But one technology is helping mend those language barriers. Coming up on Cronkite News, how tablets are being used to bridge gaps between languages.
Heaven knows you're a dreamer. Don't hide it from anyone. Don't hide it from anyone. Would you believe me if I said we are here for a reason now? This is our life. This is what counts. This is for us. I will go anywhere for you.
Các nhà lãnh đạo Việt Nam mà nói rằng là chúng tôi sẵn sàng hy sinh đến cái người dân Việt Nam cuối cùng. Thực sự mà nói thì người dân không biết được, Viện miền Bắc không có thể ý thức một cách đầy đủ rằng đằng sau những cái tuyên bố mà cao cả đấy là sự hy sinh của chính họ.
There are between 10 to 30 million deaf people that use sign language as their primary way of communicating in the U.S. But with advances in technology, deaf and hard of hearing people are left behind with very limited resources. Cronkite News reporter Chantel Delagula tells us about a life-changing device that is giving deaf people a voice.
So many new things happening, it has helped us to become more familiar and more easily accessible and being like a normal person.
For more than 29 years, the company Language People has provided software for the deaf to communicate.
While helpful, deaf people like Greg Brooks still struggled. But the actor describes the new Connect tablet software as a game changer.
In the past, I'd go to a person and I'd have to write with them and then write back and forth, hand gestures, and I wouldn't understand what they're saying. They'd write back. And now I just a push of a button, hello, here I am, and converse back and forth.
This simple device connects to Wi-Fi, and within minutes, a virtual interpreter who knows sign language and 150 different foreign tongues appears on screen.
So a resident or a visitor could use these services coming to City Hall or going to one of our libraries for a whole bunch of different things.
The City of Newport Beach and Language People partnered to provide 7 devices so residents and visitors have an easier way to communicate.
Half of the deaf population has a reading level of 3rd grade or less, which can make it difficult to do everyday activities.
This virtual conversation is similar to Skyping, but instead of a call between 2 people, it goes directly to a sign language interpreter.
America needs to know that this software has saved lives for deaf people.
The city and company look forward to adding more devices in other locations across Newport in the years ahead. In Newport Beach, Chantel Del Aguila, Cronkite News.
While the tablet is exclusively in Newport, there's a free app anyone can use for visual translation right on their smartphone. The app can be found in the App Store under LP Connect.
Cronkite News is proud to be the news division of Arizona PBS. Here's what's coming up on Arizona Horizon and PBS NewsHour.
On the next Arizona Horizon, we'll talk about the ramifications of continued White House attacks on the judiciary. And we'll learn about a fast pitch competition for local nonprofits. That's the next Arizona Horizon.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next NewsHour, a profile of Judge Neil Gorsuch, President Trump's choice for the Supreme Court. That's Monday on the PBS NewsHour.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thanks for joining us.
For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.